Good afternoon. My name's Peter Christie. I'm the mayor, and I'm absolutely delighted that you're here. I must confess, this morning I wasn't sure if any of us were going to be here, and then the weather just, what an absolutely absurd weather day it's been. You know, it sleeted, and then it snowed, and then the sun came out, and now I'm not sure we're going to get anything, because when I look on the radar, it's going north and south. So, as someone once said to me when I moved here 10 years ago, welcome to Arkansas weather. It just bounces around all over the place. This afternoon, we're going to give you the opportunity to have one-on-one discussions with the police chief and the fire chief about these projects that we're going to put on the primary on March the 3rd. The three projects are our very, very first police station. I don't say a brand new police station, because the one that they're in now is an old POA office building. We've never had a proper police station. In fact, if you want a tour, the chief will be more than happy to take you through it, as will Chief Sims on old fire station number 3. But on the police station in particular, if you're trying to book somebody, you've got to put them in a plastic chair that's right beside the janitor's buckets and mops, because they share the same closet. The force has grown from 22 when I first came into office now to 36, and probably a couple more over the next few years, and then we'll be in good shape. But it's too small, and we need to plan for the next 30 years, because I do not want another mayor and council having to come back to you and say, oh gosh, you know, we forgot something and we need to go to the well one more time. So we're trying to think as much as we possibly can towards the future. And we're doing that as part of our planning for even construction. And I'll take you through the business portion of it in a second. But for example, we reached out to some of the builders and said, what about these costs that we've got? Because we have some detailed costs that came with a needs analysis that was done by Hyde Jackson. And they looked it over and they said, you're probably going to get a spade in the ground for the police in June of 21. Walmart is going to be building their huge home office at the same time. So your labor costs are too low, your concrete's too low, and they took us through it so that we could build up the contingency. So that's the kind of detail that we've been working on. Similarly, with fire station number 3, everybody know where it is, sometimes called the Branchwoods. It's way out on Glasgow. If you can picture where Glasgow is, it's out near the Branchwood complex with the POA. That's a station that was built in 86, Chief. And it's a 2-man station. It doesn't meet fire code. It doesn't have an ambulance. And yet, we have seen the growth. For the first time last year, the new residential housing permits, which have been through the roof, by the way, over the last 5 years. Last year, there was more building on the west side than the east side. 71 is the division. That's been the first time ever. And the reason is the bypass. Because we went to the builders and said, why? Because on the east side, it was always the schools and it was sewer. That's not the case anymore. It's the bypass. So we have to be ready. We need an ambulance out there. We're going to be building a 6-man station. And I'm going to let Chief talk to you one-on-one about that a little further. But we need to modernize. Because here's the thing. We're growing. The estimated population now is somewhere between 30 and 35. The POA tells me that they have 14,000 residential water meters. So multiply that by the infamous 2.5 per household, and you can see already where you are. It's a big number. But we have to be ready for it, because I don't want us in a position of having to play catch-up. We have to manage the growth. We cannot let the growth manage us, or we're going to be in big trouble. Just look at Bentonville. They're still trying to catch up. Centerton, for the most part, hasn't even begun. And they've been growing rapidly as well. So there's a method to our madness behind all this. The other project is a fire training tower, which you'll also have an opportunity to talk to Chief Sims about. Why do we need this? Because it's mandatory for all firefighters to go through that kind of training every year. So what we have to do is we have to send apparatus and firemen to other cities. Lincoln, Rogers, Springdale, Joplin, Siloam Springs. That's about it. Yeah. And so what happens if something terribly wrong goes here? We don't have everybody here that we need. That was the reason for having this courthouse, which is going to be combined in with the police station. So we're calling it a public safety building. We used to rent 1 day a month from Bentonville for their court facility at $8,000 a month. Until October the 11th in the year 2016, I can still remember it, Bob McCaslin, the then mayor of Bentonville, called and said, Peter, your cases are too high, we're going to double your rent. $16,000. No. So we began to do the cost analysis. It was cheaper for us to have our own court. But the side effect was, on any court day, you have to have anywhere from 10 to 12 officers tied up, ready to testify if called upon to do so. Well, in those days we had 22. That was half the force. Was down in Bentonville. If something very wrong went here, we were in a big world of hurt. Now the police are here, so that if during court something goes bad, we can pull those officers into service immediately. So that's the same synergy that we're looking for with the fire training tower. Also, every year the firefighters have to go through certified training on how to drive a fire truck. These are very big, complicated, heavy machines. In the past, what we've been doing is going to a church and saying, please, can we use your parking lot, understanding that we're just going to rip the tar out of it because these machines are so heavy. And they've always been very gracious and said yes, and then we go back and we repaint the parking lot to make sure everything's okay. In this complex, we're going to have a reinforced thick concrete pad that's big enough, the lot is 10 acres, is big enough to be able to do all this driving. The police are going to be able to use it as well. And, excuse me, other local fire agencies have already approached us saying, we'd like to use it as well. So there's a lot of plus. The overarching is insurance rates. And I'm not going to peg a lot of this because some insurance companies don't use the ISO rating. But there's a thing called ISO rating. If you're at a 10, you're not in a good place. That's the worst you can possibly be. If you're a 1, it means you have outstanding fire capabilities. And the only one I know of is a certain section of Rogers where they spent $12,000 on building a fire station. Is that about right?
Rogers is a class 1. Is that what you're talking
Yeah,
about?
yeah.
So is Fayetteville and Springdale.
Okay.
There's 3.
You got to lay out a lot of bucks. Well, we were, excuse me, a 6 when I came into office. A couple of years ago, because of investments we have made, ISO dropped us to a 4. I'd like to get us to a 3 so residents can save more money on their fire insurance. For example, when it dropped to a 4, Connie and I saved $124 a year. Now, there are some interesting things floating around Facebook about this whole thing that I'd like to dispel. First of all, yes, we are going to have 3 holding cells as part of this new public safety complex. The holding cell is not a jail into perpetuity. It is to help you book multiple people at the same time. And I think I speak on behalf of everybody based on my experience as a volunteer officer in the Phoenix area. It is a nightmare, even with holding cells, trying to book 3 people, especially if one is drunk and belligerent. You have to hold them still so that you can get through the process before taking them down to county. That's what we're going to have. We are not going to have, as suggested on Facebook, which of course is the knowledge of all knowledge, that we are going to be holding prisoners for years and then releasing them, and they're going to go wild and crazy all over the Highlands after they've been let out. So the second one is, so let me see if I'm right. You're going to get the bond proceeds, and by the way, we don't get all of it in one fell swoop. You draw as you need. There's no guarantee that we're going to need 24.3 million, but I don't want to come back to the well. But we're going to do everything we can not to draw that much. But they say now you're going to get the money for that, plus you're going to raise a 1% sales tax in order to pay for it. So you're going to have the tax money and you're going to have the bond money. No, we never see the 1%. When a retailer charges you any kind of sales tax, it goes to the state. The state then is aware of how much the counties and the cities get, and they send it out. And they are told by bond counsel, which are lawyers that will be working for us on the bond, they will tell state, yes, it passed, and here is the flag, so that they know when they see it come in, 1% has to go to a third party, which pays down the bond. So we never see it. Let me talk just a little bit about what is a bond. All of us have a mortgage, and if you don't, you're very lucky. But we never have the money to buy a house outright. It's the same thing here. I don't have $24 million. So you borrow. And then you have to have a plan on how to pay it down. And that's what the 1% is going to do. It's to pay the mortgage on this. Everybody remember when they were younger, when we had our first rental as we moved out of the house? And the infamous, you must pay the last month's rent as well as the first month's rent as a guarantee. Now if you look at this sheet, and I hope you found the sheets at the back, on the costing sheet, if you go down towards the bottom, bond issuance cost debt service reserve fund, and it's 1.8 million for all of the projects. That's the estimated last payment. So that's the same as paying the last month's rent. Now the interest rate, we don't know what it's going to be. Excuse me. If you read in the paper the other day, Springdale is about to try and refinance their bond. It's currently over 3%, and Stevens, who is handling it for them, is saying it'll be about 2.4%, and it'll probably hold at that rate for the next couple of months. That's a good rate. Think about all the mortgages that you've had in your life and the percent rate that you've had to pay. So that's a bond. This is how we're going to pay for it. In a nutshell, that's what the bond looks like. I would ask that you have a look at this. I'll be around as well afterwards. There are a lot of fees that you have to pay. If you look at the construction costs on the very top line and then look at the bottom line, there's a lot of different fees that have to be paid. Not the least of which is the architectural fees, which we are going to keep at a minimum because we've already built 2 buildings over the last few years. A streets building and fire station number 4. So we've been through this before. You buy a construction manager and you have him on your side working for you, and he challenges the architect to make sure that there's not a gold toilet going in, because if you look on here, the architect gets 7.5% of everything that goes into the building. Okay, I'm just looking at my notes here, make sure I've covered everything. In the package, if you go to the second page, you will see down at the bottom when the early voting starts, which is February the 18th, and where you can go to vote early and the times. On the back of that is the actual poll locations on the 3rd of March and the times. Excuse me. And the very last page is the actual verbiage that you will see on the ballot. Now I apologize, it's small, and it may look confusing because this is a proof that will go into the newspaper. So if you look into the bottom left corner, you will see where it starts and it talks about the sales tax. Then go up to the middle column and you will see the two questions that are going to be asked. And why are there two? Because state law dictates that you must separate the questions by department. You cannot lump it all together into one. If one fails and one passes, the 1% still kicks in. However, it'll be paid off faster. The current estimate is anywhere from 10 to 12 years. It depends. If we have a really heavy recession, it could be longer because people will cut back on their spending. But as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to be here and I'm going to be able to take you through this if you have any questions after you're finished with the chiefs. Also joining us tonight, I have a couple of members of council. I've got Jim Wozniak here, and I have Linda Lloyd as well. Thank you both for being here. I have my esteemed city clerk, Wayne Jertson, is also here. We have the senior teams of both the fire department and the police department. So gentlemen, thank you for joining us again. And I think that's about it. I'll just be quiet. Oh, and the CHIPS people. What is CHIPS? That's Citizens Helping to Improve Public Safety. We have a number of residents. Billy, what did you got? 15 to 20 on the committee? 15. And they just said, we want to help you promote it. So they've been the ones putting out the signs that you've seen. Vote yes for the public safety bonds. They do not receive any money from the city. They are self-funded, but they believe in this so passionately that they're out there helping to promote the bond. And I'm quite sure that they would be more than willing to talk to you this evening if you felt that you would like to help them as well. So Billy and Dan are here as the co-chairs, and some of the other members of that committee are here as well, so I thank them for all the help. Jim?
Peter, as city councilor, you mentioned that the bond has a lifespan. And of course, you could take the penny for however long, but as soon as we pay it off, be it 8 years, 10 years, whatever, it goes away and so does the penny.
Yes, it does.
So it doesn't, once the thing is paid off in 10 or 12 years, it doesn't go for another 8 to the end of the 20. Once it's paid off, that's it.
That's correct.
It goes away. So it could go away as early as 10 or 12 years opposed to the other side.
Now, having said that, they do have an opportunity to refinance in the future. And there's two ways of doing it. If the interest rates become even more attractive, back to your mortgage. If you refi your house, the same thing here. If the mortgage rates go down or the bond rates go down, then they may wish to refinance so they can either pay it sooner or the payments will go down. And as Jim had mentioned, it'll be still that same lifespan. If they're only changing it to get a better interest rate, they do not have to go and seek permission from the public because they're not asking for more money. But if they're going to refinance and they want more money, they must come to you first and ask for your permission, as we're doing in our bond issue now. But thanks for bringing that up, Jim. Appreciate it. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to ask the two chiefs to man your stations, and I'm going to invite you to talk to the fire over here on their two projects with Chief Sims and with Chief Graves over here about the new public safety. So please help yourself, ask all the questions. This is a great opportunity for you to do so. Thank you again very, very much for coming out this evening.
So feel free to get up and just walk through these little doors here, and it's the easiest way to come up and chat with us if you have any questions for that. Or you can do it from there. Up to you.
How many square feet you got?
So, the entire building, and I don't want to, well, okay. So
Between the courthouse and the courtroom and you.
So the entire building is going to be approximately 44,000 square feet, plus or minus, and what that's going to have within that, that's just not all. That's why we're calling it a public safety building. It's just not all the police department. There's going to be about 5,000 or so, 5,500 square feet of court space with the court office space and the space they need for court. Plus, there's going to be a public safety dispatch center in the building. So there's 3 things in the building: a police department, a courthouse, and a public safety dispatch center, which dispatches for police, fire, and EMS. And then also there'll be about 2,600 square feet of shell space. And what that is just a, under the existing roof, if this was the design, okay, under the existing roof, it's just a shelled off interior. It's not finished. It has some basic mechanical to keep it from getting too cold or too warm, and it's sort of walled off. So in the future, 30 years down the road, if the future police department outgrows the building, they could break down that wall, they could move into that space, and they could expand to get them maybe another 5 or 10 years out of the existing building under the existing roof. Anything else?
I'm just wondering,
Yes.
I mean, it seems like this is all worthwhile, but will it eventually end up adding to our property taxes because there'll be more buildings and fixed costs and things?
So the question was, would this eventually add to your property taxes? I'm not sure how that works.
You'd have to vote for a tax.
Yeah, so this itself won't, thank you, council member. So this itself will not do that, raise your property taxes or 2 different taxes. This is going to be a sales tax, like
I don't
you said.
understand, just being over time, would you add more employees or just pay the cost to keep it?
Well, we
keep it
can't
and all
increase
that?
property taxes. We'd have to go,
You have to vote for it.
we have to go, the voters have to approve.
The city can go to like 5 without your say-so, and we're at 4 or 4.5 now. Anything over 5, you get to vote on, so if they needed more money to maintain that, they would have to go in front of the people again. Because you can't use the bond issue to maintain it, just to build it. So if it would need to go up, it would come in front of you guys again.
Where is it going to be?
Great, thanks for, and we do have a map up here for both police and fire showing. So currently, are you familiar with 279, the Boys and Girls Club just down the road?
Yeah.
Right across from that is our streets department. The mayor talked about, we built the streets department a few years back. A piece of land next to the streets department the city owns, and so that's where the location is going to be on the map. And it's hard to see. You can come up here after if you like to, or now. But it really, as far as where we're located in the city, some people have brought up, hey, you know, is that going to affect if I live way out on the east side and this is now way out on the west side, is it going to affect police response? It doesn't affect police response because unlike the fire department, the police department doesn't dispatch from the building. Officers are out in the field, except for during shift change or something. For the most part, officers are out in the field. The city's divided up into sectors, and we have officers in each sector so they can respond quickly. So it really doesn't matter where our police department is as far as response times are concerned.
Thank you.
Chief Sims, can you explain something about the training building that you're going to build and why it's so important for the guys to have it here?
Yeah, exactly what the mayor was talking about. A lot of times when we're doing training, the yearly training and the monthly training and the daily training, because every day we're training in something. And every day we're trying to find, places to do that training in, such as parking lots, such as buildings that we can do damage to when we're trying to do our operations, like our ladder truck, trying to find a building tall enough to do our ladder operations training and so forth. So it's very important to have that building where we can send our guys, keep them inside the city, where they can go to an area every day and train, because they have their core competencies they do every month, right, Chief? Our Division Chief of Training, Scott Cranford. They do those core competencies every month, so they have to have a place every day that they're doing that. They work 10 days a month, so every day that they're working, they're doing some sort of competency training that they're having to go find another place to do it at. And a lot of times, as the mayor spoke, a lot of the infrastructure here, especially the roads, don't support, those parking lots don't support our heavy equipment to be doing that training in. And another thing I want to bring up on the Fire Training Center, it's going to have a classroom / fire truck apparatus room, what we call apparatus. And that's going to house 2 fire trucks, the reserve fire trucks. We already have them. We're going to put them down there in that building. That's going to help us protect that area a little bit better in the south central part of town. During our analysis, we looked at different ways where we can put our next fire station. In this area right here, exactly where our training center is going, that is an area that would support a 5th fire station here in Bella Vista. Although it won't be manned 24/7 currently, when we build this, it'll be manned part of the time with our training division. If a call comes in and they happen to be there, they can take that apparatus either on a medical call or a fire call, and it'll get an apparatus quicker to the scene for medical attention, and if there's a fire, to start fire suppression activities. So that's also a perk to this land here, this property, and the project, not only the driving pad, the training tower, and the training classroom to do regional training and bring other people in here to do training, is to have that building right there that'll eventually serve as the 5th fire station of Bella Vista. And eventually, somewhere in the near future, be manned 24 hours a day. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to, with this project here, we're trying to do a couple of things here and looking into the future of Bella Vista, of our needs about placing this equipment there for the citizens.
Chief, how many firefighters do you have now, and how do you expect that number to change over the next few years?
Okay, currently right now we have on shift, we have firefighters, we have 61 firefighters. And that also includes my command staff, my division chief of training, my deputy chief Wolfgang, and we have a fire inspector currently, and that includes that. As of right now, there will be no change in personnel with the new Branchwood Fire Station. It's going to be a reallocation of personnel. We're going to take personnel where we moved the ambulance out of the Branchwood Station 3 years ago. We're going to move that ambulance back to the Branchwood Station so we can cover both fire and ambulance. So down in the near future, probably 4 or 5 years down the road, we may be looking at future personnel, perhaps.
Okay, thank you.
Do firefighters include your EMT personnel?
That's correct. They're cross-trained. So if they're a fire, they have to be an EMT to work at the fire department here in Bella Vista. So if there's, when you get an ambulance that shows up, you're getting fire personnel in that ambulance. So if they're not on the ambulance, you're on the fire truck.
I'd like to hear a comment from each of you. Have our current facilities been a problem for recruiting people? I know a lot of cities around here complain about inability to recruit police and fire. Has anybody come in and said, well, I'd love to work here, but I don't want to work in a closet?
So I could start that. I mean, they haven't said that per se to me, okay, but it is very competitive. I mean, everybody knows the job unemployment's very low, especially in Northwest Arkansas. The job market's very, very tight. There's certain restrictions for police and fire personnel. They have to maintain certain standards, so that even lessens our pool even more. Northwest Arkansas, the salaries are very competitive. We're competing with some places like Bentonville and Fayetteville and Rogers that they have, a little more the tax revenue or revenue stream to pay people just a little better. Our pay is good, okay, but so all of these things do come into play. I mean, it is difficult to bring a recruit or somebody interested who's toured our police department. Okay, probably quite a few folks here. It's hard to walk somebody through there. And convince them how professional we are and what the future holds for them if they come work for us. Okay? It really is when you literally have people with their offices inside closets, a holding area that has a mop bucket in the corner because it has to double for that. File cabinets up and down the hallways because we don't have a records department. Okay, so it's difficult. So it hasn't. It's hard to prove a negative. I don't know. Nobody said that to me outright, but I know all of these are incentives when you try to recruit people. You try to, not only do you try to pay them as well as you can, but then there's other perks that come with the job. There's professionalism, there's some pride in the department, and all of this comes into play. And I think as Bella Vista, both police and fire and all departments, we have to do the best we can to present the most professional images that we can to attract the best people possible, because in police, and then I'll let the chief talk about fire, I mean, we want good people because, you get somebody who's not quite up to par, but you take them because that's all that's left. And then you run into problems in the future that can cause you a lot of problems as far as the city goes. Okay, so thank you.
Yeah, and we do on the fire side. It's kind of interesting. But our main fire station and our Branchwood fire station, which the new fire station is going to kind of help with this, we sleep bunk style. Okay, so at our town center fire station, and I challenge anybody to come down and take a tour. If you're over there taking a tour at the police department, step on over to the fire side. We sleep bunk style. So there's 6 guys sleep in one room, open room together. Okay, which we do at the Central Fire Station, and we do that at our Branchwood Fire Station. So kind of read between the lines. I'm limited a lot of times on who I can hire, where I can put them at if we hire them. So that's an issue. We've actually had people leave because nobody wants to be sleeping next to somebody else while they're hearing that person snoring here, doing this, doing whatever they're doing while they're sleeping. And then when the tone goes out, everybody in the bunk room hears it. Okay? So some of that we have eliminated by doing some selective station tones, but we still have where guys can go somewhere else and get an individual room and not have to listen to any of that. So that is a problem with us in the fire department side when we're looking at people. And on the training side, retention, because everybody in Northwest Arkansas, because of some of the stuff the mayor talked about, the people who grade us, the ISO, which grades the fire department, said, this is something you need, and we're going to lower your score because of this. And the training tower, the availability of training on site in your city. Well, everybody in Northwest Arkansas, Rogers, Springdale, Fayetteville, Siloam Springs, all built new training centers. Well, when people hear that, people say, hey, I can go there and get this type of training, where I can't get it here in Bella Vista, because in Bella Vista, we have to go find a place to train. We have to find a church. We have to find a parking lot, either a church parking lot or a POA parking lot. We have to find a building that will allow us to put our equipment on there and do our ladder training. So yeah, that makes a difference in both sides. How we're housing our firefighters and how we're training our firefighters. And we've lost people because of both.
I believe you already own the property too for the new fire station.
That's correct. We own that new fire station, if everything's approved, is going to go on the corner of Edinburgh and Glasgow, which is right across the street, kind of catty-corner to the current Branchwood fire station. Station built a long time ago, built for two people only. Yes, sir.
What happens to the current police department when they move out and move into a new building, since you have the fire station right there next door?
Well, I'm hoping that it's been talked about that the fire department will be able to get that building in the future, Mayor. That's kind of what we're talking about. And we can expand the fire operations, because right now we live in about, Central Fire Station is about 3,500 square foot living space, including a training room. And then we got an apparatus bay that we store our apparatus in. Hopefully we'll be able to turn that complex into Central Fire Station. That's what's been the talk as of right now.
So the idea is to continue to use the space and make good use of it, so the city doesn't really lose anything. I mean, because Station 1 will have to expand in the future as the fire department has to grow a little bit, and that'll allow them to do that without having to then relocate or build another building and cost the city a lot more money. Yes, ma'am.
Haven't I heard you say before that in this complex you're going to be able to clean your equipment much better than you have before? Is that correct?
It's clean. Well,
Or maintain.
Yes. So I didn't go through it at this point, but I'd be happy to. So our current facility is lacking in many areas, and a lot of you folks know that. There's no training facilities. There's no equipment. A lot of areas to maintain equipment. For example, our tactical response team or SWAT team, our armor with all of our different weapons and ammunition and things we use. We don't have an official armory for that. It's just a closet. We put a solid door on and a lock to it. So it is difficult to maintain as we continue to grow and become more professional and just get different equipment for the job. It's really difficult to maintain that equipment, to know where it's at, to keep track of it without having proper facilities to do that. So we're taking all that into account with the new building that we eventually will build to make sure that, again, that we can continue to operate and provide. I mean, Bella Vista, again, this year was the safest city in Arkansas, rated by several different organizations, again. I think that's great, and in order to do that, we're going to need just to maintain the professionalism and maintain the training and the quality of folks that we draw into the agency. to do that. This is just all part of the equation moving forward into the future.
Did the gun range make it in?
So, and that's another great, so as far as training goes, just like the fire chief was talking about, the police have to do a lot of training on an annual basis. One of those things is qualifying with our firearms. We do it twice a year. Our SWAT team has to do it once a month, okay? And we don't currently have a gun range. We have to use the POA range. They're very nice. They let us use it, but then again, that takes away from the POA members, and that's not really a professional way to do it. So yes, in this building, we in the basement, we're able to put in a 4-lane handgun range, which is really going to be helpful because then officers will be able to go down and qualify and practice on a regular basis, become more proficient, and then we won't have to then go out and take away and ask the POA to take away their range from the members to go out there and qualify with the POA on their property. So it does have the gun range in it, yes, sir.
You said that other cities have approached you about the training facility. Is that a source of revenue for the city then, or is this a freebie?
That'll probably be something we can sit down and come up with a price on if they use the facility on kind of like a rent basis. But we have been approached by the city about renting that space out. So.
All righty, well, if that's it, I want to thank you for coming out once more. If you still have questions and you'd like to speak with the chiefs one-on-one, because I know not everybody feels comfortable asking a question in the middle of an open forum like this, please do stay behind, ask the questions. This is a great opportunity. There's no such thing as a dumb question. You've probably heard that before. It's a hackneyed phrase, but it's very, very true. So please do meet with both chiefs and myself if you have some of the finance questions, or if you think of something later on and you'd like to talk to one of the three of us, please do so. I'm at City Hall, and the two chiefs are also in that same City Hall complex, and you just have to dial the main number and you can be directed over to their phones. So once again, thank you for coming out. Let's keep our fingers crossed that other cities will take care of the bad weather and the sun will poke its head out tomorrow and all will be well.
Mayor, real quick, we do have some informational flyers up here if you're interested. I know you can't see them from there with just some of the bullet points of white projects important as well as some bond language and stuff if you want to see what that's going to look like. Feel free to come up and take some.
Thank you.
So maybe it might be a good idea in your advertisement, telling people to check with your insurance carrier to see what you save, so you can offset some of the costs of
Oh, did you? Yeah, all right. Yeah, here I am live.
With the name and face.
I'm excited about what you guys are doing here. I'm all for it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you guys have my 100% support. Anybody I can talk to about it, I'll let them know how valuable this is, because I do know this.
You should. There should be no difference for you. No difference.
But as I look at my neighborhood, it should be a little bit safer because I have a police station closer to it.
In theory, right?
Theory.
I would think so. Sure.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate the information. Thank you.
So, there will be
I was going to mention something about this. Putting that regularly away myself. Rearranging the office because it's already structured. It had to put walls up, take walls out, couldn't do that. So what was there when we put it in there, it was all we had. Place to go. Merchant, to the state, to the bond people. So we're not touching it at all. Bills are getting paid, and there's no worry about it's going to get spent some other way.
And last question is, why did you want to come out to today's town hall?
Just to see what they were going to say. You know, I'm currently on the city council, so that doesn't hurt anything either. Because we talked about this there, because that's where all this started. I just want to see what they had to say. Kind of turnout. Nice turnout.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We'll be back.
Hi, Scott.
Well, good. Thank you so much. All right. See you. Rest of your day.
I was here for 32 years.
Wow.
7 years up north.